My name's Kathy Ford. Welcome. I'm the director of the College Academic Advising Office. Hear me okay in the back now? Great, thank you. I am here with my friend and colleague, Devin Moore. Devin is the director of the College Center for Student Success. We have some pre-planned slides that we wanted to show you, but we hope that we'll go through the slides a little bit quickly and then allow time for the questions that you might have. We want this to be more of a conversation. So let's get started. Like I said, we'll do a little bit on each of our offices, the Office of the Dean of Students in the College, College Academic Advising Office, the Center for College Student Success, and then we will have time for questions and answers. So what you've been experiencing this weekend with orientation, we hope, is a really great time, and that's something that our office focuses on. We work within the Dean of Students office in the college, and we're dedicated to helping students navigate their academic path through college and beyond, and we do that in a variety of ways through the 5 different offices that are represented within the Dean of Students in the college. We connect with students throughout their time here. We aim to foster meaningful advising relationships as they move through and navigate the curriculum. We have, as you can see from the slide, 5 different offices under the Dean of Students office in the college. I'll go a little bit out of order. The first office is our college programming office that puts on this wonderful weekend. So they work with students on class-based programming from we used to say orientation and beyond, but it's really pre-orientation and on through graduation. They are responsible for lots of different and important and exciting programs, all the way on up to the college diploma ceremony that you'll all be coming back for to celebrate with us in 4 years. The largest office within the Dean of Students office is the College Academic Advising Office. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later. We work with the College Center for Student Success. Like I said, the College Programming Office, the office College Center for Research and Fellowships. That is our office that helps connect students with research opportunities, especially in the beginning of their time here, and works with them throughout their time and beyond as they are applying for national scholarships and fellowships. They hold lots of workshops and lots of different ways to meet with scholarship and fellowship and research advisors to get your students connected to these opportunities. And then our newest office, which we had just added to our slide deck, is the Office of Community Standards. We've had people working on these issues within our office forever, but we have decided that this is an important enough topic that we need to devote additional resources to this. So our Office of Community Standards is the office that works with students if they are doing something like taking a leave of absence or returning from a leave of absence. They will work with students who are experiencing physical or mental health issues and help them get the resources that they need. They will also work with students who have been accused of discipline and work with them throughout the discipline process. As you can see, all our offices are located in the lovely Harper Memorial Library building, which I'm hoping you've had a chance to stroll through at some point since you've been here. And we have the picture of the outside of the office, and then the beautiful, iconic Harper Library, which is just gorgeous, and this is a study space that students use, and I hope that you can sort of spend some time there. Hopefully you've been to a reception there, or if you haven't yet, you will be in the future, because it's just a really wonderful space. Now I'm going to sort of turn to focusing on the College Academic Advising Office, and each student who enters there we go. Each student who enters the college is assigned a college academic advisor. So you've heard a lot about advising. We have lots of different type of advising here in the college, but the office that I work with is a college academic advising office. The students work one-on-one with their academic advisor. Each student has an academic advisor. They stay with that advisor through 4 years in the college. The advisors get to know students very well. We work in confidential one-on-one relationships. Advisors are assigned to students based on which residence hall they live in. So that gives us opportunities for some really nice synergy working with our housing office so that, the college advisor can be in touch with the resident head of that particular house and say, I have a concern about X student. Can you tell me a little bit about how things are going in housing? Are you seeing that person? Are they participating in house meals and meetings? And it allows allows us a nice way to have just some more layers of safety net for the students. Students will meet regularly with their academic advisor over the course of their time here. We're working with them to come up with an individual plan to get them to graduation. We are also great at working with all of the other offices, not only in the college, but also across the university, so that we are able to make good recommendations, good targeted specific recommendations to your student for things that might be useful to them. So I always say, you know, our office might not know the exact answer to a question, but students should always reach out to their academic advisor, because even if we don't know the answer, we know who knows the answer and how to get that student hooked up with that person or that office. So the academic advisor becomes kind of a primary resource for the student, and we're really proud of that. And so ultimately, we're helping your student define and achieve success. We take our relationships very seriously. We have a professional relationship, like I said. We have the expectation that if a student contacts us, we're going to get back to them within 24 business hours, so that, you know, even if a student isn't meeting with an advisor during a regular scheduled appointment, that student can reach out to their advisor with a quick question and get an answer back in a quick amount of time. And then we also work very closely with the academic departments, so that when a student declares a major, we stay with them. The student stays with their academic advisor in the college, but we can make recommendations to different faculty in the divisions who can be helpful to them. So for example, each academic major has a faculty member who's a director of undergraduate studies, and that person is tasked with working with the undergraduate majors. And so we work again as liaisons with those directors of undergraduate studies, so we're able to make good connections, good help for the students. And our students are going to be meeting with their academic advisor a couple of times during orientation, and then at least once a quarter in their first year. So during orientation tomorrow, the students are going to be meeting with their academic advisor in a big group meeting. That big group meeting is going to be made up of the other students other first-year students who are also assigned to that advisor. And I always tell students and parents that meeting is very important, but in a lot of ways it's not emblematic of the relationships that we're going to be forming with the students as we move on. We're not going to have other big group meetings like that. We're typically meeting with a student one-on-one, but we want everybody to be on the same page, and we find that this is the best way to disseminate all that information quickly in that big group meeting. On top of that, you know that your student has worked over the summer with our office to get their schedule ready, to get ready to pre-register. Through pre-registration, we've been checking all those registrations as they were released to the students. And so we have decided it's very important to meet one-on-one with our students, even if it's not going to be a long meeting, just a quick 15-minute check-in during O week to make sure that their schedule is working for them, that they have the courses that they need, just a chance to kind of say hi one-on-one. But then after that, we move into establishing sort of the more substantial relationships with our students. Each student in their first year is required to meet with their advisor at least once a quarter. And we have a really nice sort of hook for getting the students in. Most students want to meet with their advisors, that's not an issue, but students here need to meet with their academic advisor once a quarter, like I said, in their first year, and they need to do that by the end of 7th week so that they can be eligible to pre-register for winter quarter classes. That is a big driver for our students. Our students really want to be able to pre-register for courses, and so typically it is not difficult for us to get our students in to see us by that end of that deadline. Like I said, we're meeting with them once a quarter in their first year, and then as they transition into their second, third, and fourth year, that requirement moves to once a year. So in the autumn quarter, for example, we're meeting with our first-year students, but we're also meeting with all our fourth-year students to make sure that they're on track to graduate. In the winter, first-year students again, but then we're meeting with our third-year students, and in the spring, first-year students and the second-year students. However, we establish this really nice foundation with the students. So when we get to the end of their first year and we tell the student, we are moving now for you to, you need to see me at least once a year in your second, third, and fourth years, often that response is, but I've been meeting with you quarterly. That's worked out really well for me. Can I continue to do that? Absolutely. We have time to do that. We welcome students doing that. And we're happy to see students throughout their time here as often as they want. In addition to sort of those scheduled meetings that are going to take place, advisors are available for quick email, phone consultations, additional meetings as needed. And, once in a while, you might be talking to your student and say, have you talked to your advisor about this? And they would say, well, I'd like to, but my advisor is booked up a week in advance. We always have an advisor on call. That's someone within the office, an advisor, a dean, a senior advisor who has no other scheduled meetings that day, and their job is just to triage quick questions from students. So there's always, Monday through Friday, somebody available to talk with a student, answer a quick question. The advisor on call is not going to be the person that a student works through a 4-year plan with 2 majors and 3 minors, but the advisor on call is definitely someone who could, answer a quick question about registration or requirements or whatever they might have. And part of what, you're all thinking about and is on everybody's minds right now is your students making a successful adjustment to college. Your students came here being the absolute best in their classes, and then they're faced with an environment where everybody else is like that as well. So it can be kind of a confusing time, and students who haven't previously experienced maybe struggling in a class might end up doing that, and that's okay. We want students to be outside of their comfort zone and working hard. They might have to sort of redefine what getting good grades means. They might have concerns about fitting in. They are gonna miss you regardless of what they say. They're gonna miss their pets a lot. That's something we hear about often in the quarterly conferences. They may have come here 100% sure that they want to major in X, but then get here and discover major Y, and so that might cause some concern with them. And then this is all new for everybody. This is probably the first time students have lived away from home, and that they have to balance their own schedules and figure out getting up on time and not having somebody else help them with that. So they're balancing academics, they're working, figuring out which extracurricular activities they want to participate in, they're meeting their social obligations, and that's all the sort of, things that they're experiencing and maybe struggling with a little bit as they adjust to college. That is perfectly normal, and that's probably the best thing that you can say to your student when they contact you and say, oh, I think everybody else knows what they're doing. They all know that they want to major in X, and I came here thinking one thing and it's the other. Nope, everybody's in that same boat. So, how do you best support your student besides all the stuff that you've been doing all along to get them here? I think a lot of the stuff that we mentioned is really pretty intuitive, and you're likely already doing this, but, be sympathetic. Transitioning from high school to college is a big challenge. Ask them about everything. So it's important to ask about classes, but it's also equally important to ask about things like, are you sleeping? Are you sleeping more than 2 hours a night? Are you eating regular meals? Are you meeting people? Are you, participating in house activities? Have you gotten out to see other parts of the city? Remind them that there are lots of resources, that they're not the first person to struggle, and that everybody goes through some period of discomfort, and there's lots of resources available to them. I would say sort of one of the most important questions you can ask them is, have you talked to your academic advisor about this? Because like I said, even if this is not something that is directly covered in our office or in CCSS or in any of the other offices within the Dean of Students office in the college, this is something that we can point the student in the right direction. And the other thing is too that you may have been able to sort of step in and help smooth problems, but really our goal is the same as your goal, which is to make sure that they're able to resolve problems on their own with the resources that are available to them. So we would say, we resist the urge to sort of get involved right away. Ask them, like I said, have you talked with your advisor? Who have you talked with about this? There are people there that you can discuss this with. So really, you're there helping to sort of bolster them. And what I always say to students, or what I say to parents, is often you're going to hear from your student during the highs and during the lows, but maybe you're not going to hear from them in the in-betweens. So you might hear from a student after they've gotten a math exam back and they didn't do as well as they had hoped, and they think that, their academic career is over because they got a C for the first time. and then they go talk to their faculty member and they realize, or they understand that a bunch of people got C's, and it's not uncommon to get a C on your first math exam, and you still can be super successful in the class even with that first C, and they feel 100% better, but they don't call you back and tell you that. So, you know, I think you're going to be hearing sort of from the highs and from the lows, and to sort of help you put that into perspective, that's actually very common. And the next slide I was going to talk about was FERPA, which you've probably heard about, but FERPA is the Federal Education Rights and Privacy Act, and that is really the law that governs how we are able to interact with students and sort of others outside of that. And when I say we have a confidential one-on-one relationship with students, we take that very seriously. So it's very common for a concerned parent to maybe contact an advisor, contact me, that's absolutely fine. But our policy is, if you contact us, we're gonna loop your student in. So it's not a problem at all to contact our office. We welcome that, but we're going to say, let me contact your student and, you know, see if we can sort of work this all out together. We're not going to have a sort of behind the scenes relationship with the parent. We want the student to be in that loop, and that's something that really governs sort of how we interact with students. Oftentimes, though, the next question I get is, well, you're going to contact us if things are going horribly wrong. And the answer to that is yes. You know, FERPA does not mean that we cannot contact you in an emergency. If something happens, we're going to let you know about that. In fact, even in sort of a non-emergency situation where a student at the end of the quarter, their status has changed from being in good academic standing to going on probation, we're going to contact you then as well. We're going to send you an email and say that your student's academic status has changed and that you should be in contact, or you can be in contact with them to sort of talk about that and talk about resources. So FERPA is the guideline that covers how we interact, but that doesn't mean that we're not going to contact you in an emergency. So I'm happy to answer any questions, but I wanted to let Devin sort of talk about College Center for Student Success, and then we'll open the floor up to questions for everybody.
Thank you, Kathy. Good morning, everyone. It's so wonderful to see so many of you here wanting to learn more about the work that we do. I recognize many of your faces from the Family Resource Fair yesterday. That was a lot of fun. Again, my name is Devin Moore, and I'm the director of the Center for College Student Success. We're also called CCSS because we do a lot of acronyms here at the University of Chicago, you may have noticed. So UChicago is incredibly committed to supporting students, regardless of their background or financial means, to be successful here during their time in the college. With that in mind, our center was established in 2015 as a place that really supports and celebrates students who are first in their family to attend college, what we call first-generation college students who may come from under-resourced backgrounds or who may be undocumented or DACA recipients or be part of a mixed status family. We also coordinate the Odyssey Scholarship Program, and some of your students may be part of that. With that said, we are part of the many layers of support provided through the Dean of Students Office in the college. We work very, very closely with the College Advising Office and the many amazing college advisors. So any student in the college is welcome to use the resources available through CCSS, through the center. So I do want to emphasize that. We work very closely, again, with the college advisors, so closely, in fact, 2 of the college advisors are actually situated within our space to support our programs, and we train and work with all of the college advisors to make sure that they're comfortable and really well equipped to support students from all backgrounds. I will say, so this is a picture of Rockefeller Chapel, but we are also located in Harper Memorial Library, the slide that Kathy showed earlier. We're on the 4th floor of the West Tower. We always encourage students to use the elevator because the stairs are kind of windy and confusing. But we have a lot of different resources available in our space. First of all, the space itself is just a really comfortable place for students to come and gather, whether it's meeting with an advisor or coming for a program. We have a soft seating study space. Students will come, hang out, sometimes sleep. Sleep, so important, as Kathy mentioned. And we have our textbook lending library available, and we have a library of over 1,200 volumes that students can check out for free. up to a quarter and we have most core classes available. We also have a laptop lending program. So some students may come in without a laptop, or at some point during their experience here, their laptop may malfunction or break, and that can be pretty devastating for a student here where so much of their work relies on that machine. So students are able to come make an appointment with us and check out a machine, again, for up to a quarter for them to use and support their work here. We also offer a free print station, and that is something that any student, again, can sign up for. They just need to create an account on our website. Finally, I would want to mention our emergency loan program. Again, we recognize that sometimes unexpected financial emergencies can come up for students, and that can cause a lot of anxiety, and so we developed this program to help students ease that anxiety. It's a very, very simple process. Students come meet with us, and they can borrow small amounts of money to, say, cover things like broken glasses or other kinds of emergencies that may come up, just to help them further their success here. We offer so many different workshops and programs. I do not want to list them all here because that would take all day. But just to mention a few of them, one of the things Kathy mentioned earlier was that sometimes students can get this feeling that it's called imposter syndrome, where they feel like they're the only one who doesn't have this figured out, that maybe they don't belong here, they might be that admissions mistake. That is a very, very common feeling here at the University of Chicago, and so we have great partners here to help students think about that and overcome that and boost their confidence. We work very, very closely with the College Center for Research and Fellowships to help students think early on about how to engage with research opportunities and how to do things like, navigate office hours. How do I approach this situation? How do I talk to a faculty member? How do I develop that relationship and maybe down the line get a very good letter of recommendation? We also offer a handful of financial literacy programs. For example, we're partnering with the Bursar to have students better understand their bill and how to prepare and budget for their next bill. As well as partner with our colleagues in study abroad to think about how to plan for a study abroad opportunity and budget for that accordingly. So just a small sampling. I also wanted to mention just the different supports that we provide for students in a number of different ways. We found that mentoring opportunities can be really beneficial. We have a small program we call Maroon Mentors. Actually, incoming first-year students have already applied for this program and been matched with upper-class mentors. Last year, we established an organization called the FLI Network, or FLY Network. F stands for First Generation, L stands for Low Income, I stands for Immigrant, including undocumented immigrants. And the FLI Network is meant to be a place where faculty, staff, alumni, and students can be very visible and proud and connect with each other more broadly across campus. So we've created also some mentoring opportunities within that network as well. We offer, through a partnership with Campus and Student Life and our colleagues over at the Center for Identity and Inclusion, the Butterfly Support Group, which is specifically for undocumented students to offer mental health support. And I also just want to mention how important it is that students be engaged across campus. Creating social networks is super important, whether that's in the house, whether that's through student organizations. There are just so many places for students to dial in and get connected and build really strong support networks. So we also are really intentional about building good connections with various student organizations that work with our student populations, including the Socioeconomic Diversity Alliance, the Questbridge Scholars Network, and the University of Chicago Coalition for Immigrant Rights. So I just wanted to throw that out there. But obviously that is something for you all to think about, is just how your students are engaging more broadly with other students on campus. And, just one of the questions that Kathy mentioned, what kinds of connections are you making? What kind of relationships are you forming? So that is just a broad overview of the many things that we offer through the center, but we recognize that you may have many questions for us. So as Kathy mentioned, we're just going to open it up now for a good amount of Q&A. We do have a wonderful colleague here from the College Programming Office who is going to assist us with passing some microphones throughout the audience so that we can make sure that everyone in the room can hear the questions that are being asked. So we'll go ahead and get that started.
I'm curious about how many students are assigned to each advisor, and also whether we family members if we don't find out through our students, will we have any sense of who the advisor is, or have any information about, the exchange that's taking place with the advisor?
So to answer your first question, how many advisor or how many students is each advisor assigned? At this point, we have what we call full load advisors. So these are advisors in the office who don't have other responsibilities, such as the deans or the senior advisors. They will have about 320, 325 students. And that's divvied up roughly a fourth. So about that number, a quarter of first years, second years, third years, fourth years. So the advisors now are meeting with anywhere between, say 75 or 98 first-year students in that big group meeting. After that, like I said, it's a one-on-one meeting. And then your other question was, so I guess I should say too that that is a large number. And the question that we are often asked is, do you get to actually know your students with numbers like that? And the answer is absolutely. And the ways that you can be supportive of this and encouraging of this is, really encourage your student to talk openly with their advisor. I didn't do it in the earlier session, but I always give this really goofy example of, let's say, for example, there is an eccentric alum who loves windsurfing, and she wants to give a scholarship to another student who is a windsurfer. If I hear in that quarterly conference that, among my students' interests is windsurfing, I can make that recommendation to the financial aid office. And so the better the student knows their advisor and, the better the student gets to, be open with their advisor, and the better the advisor gets to know the student, the more helpful that we can be. We also have time structured so that there's enough time for advisors to meet with all of their students so they do get to know them well. But then your second question is, how would we as parents know who the student's advisor is? Unless your student has told you, there wouldn't be a way that you knew. But let's say, for example, it's partway into October and you've got some concerns, just call our office and we can always hook you up with the student's advisor. So that would be a great way to get in touch with us.
Thank you very much. One last thing, which is you mentioned that the one example of when you might reach out to a family if the academic standing had changed at the end of the quarter. But are there any other, how often, or it sounds like you're not very often reaching out to families, so we probably will not hear from.
You're right. No news is good news, right? So you probably won't be hearing from us, but clearly if there is a serious situation, you're going to hear from us. A couple of years back, we had an incident with a student who was not I think it was a high school student. Devin might not remember the story I'm talking about, but there was an unfortunate incident where a student said, I'm going to go, shoot up the University of Chicago campus. This was not anyone associated with the university, but clearly that was something that we were taking very, very seriously. We ended up closing the campus. The first time that I've worked here for nearly 30 years, we have never closed campus, but we closed down, and that was an instance where Dean Ellison thought, this is something that parents need to hear about, why we're doing this, what precautions we are taking. And so, you have all signed up, I hope, for the parent, you've given your email addresses so you can sign up for the parent email list. We notified parents and said, this is what we're doing, these are the precautions that we're taking. But yeah, ultimately, no news is good news.
Thank you for this very informative session. I have a couple of questions as well. One is, will we receive a transcript from the student or from the university? And the second question is, the student has a career advisor as well. So how does that work with the academic advisor? And is it up to the student to take initiative to see if they're interested in a particular career field, what kind of courses will be required?
So your first question is no. Family members don't receive grade reports or transcripts or anything like that. We recommend that you establish with your student right away, sort of this is, these are when grades come out, and this is how you're going to show me your transcript. We make it, so while we don't send grades out, we actually make it very easy for students to have a transcript sent to their parents. That's something that they can do through their portal. They can arrange to have either an official or an unofficial transcript sent. So that would be something that you would want to work with your student on. And then suddenly I forgot the second question.
Oh, yes. So each student is assigned a career advisor. And so, again, this is an additional layer of support. And so the career advisor can sometimes be a good sounding board for different career paths, different ideas, potential courses to take. However, ultimately, the academic advisor is the best person to talk to, making sure that the student is on track to complete the core and major requirements. But yeah, with that in mind, some students for certain programs are required to meet with their career advisors, but in the most part, it is incumbent on the student to make those connections and reach out to those resources. They get a lot of information, I will say, from the Office of Career Advancement, so pretty much every student engages with that office, and the earlier the better, honestly, to build those connections and learn about their resources.
Right, and they clearly can speak to this better than we can as their experts, but what we hear from them is that students are engaging with employers early and earlier. When I first started, it was very common for a student to have an internship after their third year, and that might be the first time they have an internship, and it might be sort of their first kind of career exploration experience, but really that happens earlier and earlier, and so career advancement is just a great resource for them, for the students, and they, in the first year in particular, have a lot of sort of low impact ways, sort of non-competitive ways for students to gain experience. So they have a great job shadowing program that students can participate in. They also do different treks where they will take a group of, one career advisor or a couple of career advisors will take a group of students to a particular area to focus on a certain industry. We have treks all over the world. Most of them focus domestically, of course, but these are just sort of great non-competitive opportunities for students to gain experience.
I had one quick question, which was you mentioned briefly lending library for resources, textbooks or otherwise. Is that open to all students, just in case they can't find a core book or something?
Yes, absolutely. Our textbook lending library is open to all students. It opens up the Monday of the quarter, each quarter, and this quarter will be open at 10 a.m. on Monday, October 1st. If a student is looking for a particular book, we actually have an online listing of every single book in our library on our website, ccss.uchicago.edu. Click on Lending Library, and a student should know what we have in stock. It's updated in real time, so if that gets checked out, a student can know before they come in whether or not it's still available.
Thank you.
Talk about going when you drive the golf cart at the end of the quarter.
It's the textbook library, I should mention, is entirely built off of donations from other students. It's just really been remarkable to see how generous everyone has been to support this initiative. And yes, we do have thousands of books coming in. It's wonderful.
So I will wonder whether you can be more explicit about what FERPA will and will not allow you to do and what it gives you discretion over. Because I noticed that in your slides, you use the word may contact us instead of will contact us. So I will wonder, when is it that you will and when is it that it's up to your discretion and you're going to make a judgment call on whether you're going to contact the parent or not?
Sure, yeah, so absolutely. So we are going to definitely contact you if there's any sort of emergency. We're also going to email parents if the student status changes. Like I said, if they're moving from being on good academic standing to probation. But for the most part, we're pretty hands-off. So we're not going to contact you if your student is failing a course. That's really up to them to navigate. We, of course, are encouraging them to be in contact with their families and encouraging them to be in touch with resources, but ultimately, like I said, the relationship is really between the advisor and the student.
I have a question, and forgive me if you covered this already, but are the academic advisors all full-time employees of the university, or do they have a dual capacity?
No, that's a great question. I have worked in the system so long, I just sort of take that for granted. You are absolutely right. We are all full-time professional advisors. We don't have responsibilities elsewhere. We participate in, other things with other offices when they have a special event, but ultimately our job is to work with the students to make sure that they're navigating the curriculum correctly and accurately, and that is our role. That's what we take seriously. We are not faculty members in other departments. A lot of us come here with deep backgrounds in different academic fields. We come from a lot of different areas as well, but ultimately that's our sole responsibility. I'm not a person who's going to knock a state school. I am a product of a state school. I got a wonderful education, but we did not have academic advising. We had graduate students, and in some instances, maybe a faculty member who might be in your department, might not be in your department, who you could talk with, but these are professionals dedicated solely to that. So thank you for asking that.
Hi. This isn't specifically an academic question, but more of a dean of students question. I'm here. When you talk about contacting parents in case of an emergency, are you referring to an academic emergency, being put in academic probation? What happens? I have some questions about what happens in case, a student gets into a car accident and ends up in the hospital. Would parents be contacted in that situation, and how do we sort of arrange for that to happen?
We have a Dean on Call system, and Deans on Call are professionals in a variety of offices across campus who train to become Deans on Call, and they take an on-call shift every, 3 or 4 or 5 weeks. And what they do is they carry a beeper, and anytime there's an incident that a university student is involved in, whether it's a college student or somebody from one of the graduate divisions, the Dean on Call is contacted. So if a student winds up in the emergency room, or if a student gets into a car accident, or if a student got arrested or something like that, which of course never happens with college students, the Dean on Call is notified, and like I said, they're on a 24-hour shift at that point in time. So the Dean on Call is then in contact with our office, and then yes, in a situation like a car accident, we're definitely going to be looping the family in. If it's not a serious car accident, we're expecting that your kid is going to contact you, but if it's a serious thing and the student is not able to contact their families, yes, we'll be in contact.
Okay, thank you. And there's nothing that we have to have them sign?
No, so there's, some of you may have older students who've gone through the college, and at a certain point in time, we used to use this old form that said, I want my parents notified, and you would sign off on, the student would sign off on that. We don't use that anymore. We're going to contact you if there's an emergency.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe next. What's the policy on declaring majors? When do they have to declare their major by?
Depends on what the major is. So for the most part, within the first 2 years, students are focusing on their college core curriculum or their gen ed courses. That makes up about a third of what they're doing. About another third would be made up of their major, and then the last third would be their electives, which could encompass a second major or a minor or something like that. Students are kind of asked to declare their major by the end of their second year. Most students have figured that out by then, and it makes sense for them to declare by their end of their second year. There's some students who might be on the fence thinking, well, I might do econ, I might do public policy. We're not going to, there aren't going to be any ramifications if a student doesn't declare their major until, say, the start of their third year. I say declaring at the end of their second year for the most part because there are a handful of things, and their advisor can talk more specifically about this with them, but there are a handful of majors that students need to apply to. This is a very old-timey thing, in my opinion, where they have an application process that is due at the end of the first year. So, for example, students who might be interested in the law, letters, and society major, that asks for an application that is due at the beginning of the spring term. Something like fundamentals requires students to apply at the end of their first year, maybe in their second year. Their students would be applying to something like IS Hume, but for the most part, students sort of opt into a major simply by taking those courses. And then We work with the students throughout their time here, but since we're generalists, we also have directors of undergraduate studies in each major who can answer sort of more specific questions about the major and can be available for helping students that way.
Yes, please. Are there ever incidences where an advisor and a student have just don't mesh in personalities, and if so, how is that handled? And secondly, if an advisor should unexpectedly leave the university for whatever reason, how is the student reassigned?
So the question is, are there times when students and their advisor don't mesh? And I wouldn't say that they don't mesh. I mean, we are all professionals. We work really hard to develop a good relationship with our students. But there might be an instance where a student does prefer to have a different advisor. And so what the student does is they petition me, and I will often call the student in and sort of talk with them about what their concerns are. And then I'm able to make a switch based on sort of which advisors are also advising people in their residence hall and sort of make a good fit for them.
What if an advisor...
So second question. Yeah, this is our second time doing this, so I feel like I'm only catching the first part or remembering the first part of questions. I apologize. So yeah, we do occasionally have times where an advisor will need to leave in the middle of the year because, their spouse or partner got another job and they're going somewhere else, or they got another job. And so in instances like that, we try to hire someone and get them trained quickly enough to be a helpful advisor. But in that interim period, we will typically divide students up to sort of have an interim advisor in that period until we can get a new advisor up and running for them. So students wouldn't sort of not have an advisor. And we will, for example, we've had someone accept a job in another office, and so for that advisor students, we've reassigned their first year and fourth year students to another advisor so that they have someone that they can work with closely. And then sometimes we will tell the second and third year students that since there's not a required conference in the autumn quarter, if you have questions, you can work with the advisor on call, which we have available every day. But occasionally I'll have students who will write to me and say, hey, I've been told that I need to work with the advisor on call, and the advisor on call has been great, but I wonder if I can, come talk to you about this. And absolutely, yeah, we're happy to work with students.
Inga. Are there any differences between 18-year-old students and underage students?
Are there any differences between sort of a 17-year-old student and an 18-year-old student? Is that your question? So, everybody, I don't have a great answer for that, to tell you the truth. So we consider everyone to be a young adult. We're going to treat everyone who is a first-year student ultimately the same way, so we don't have a different governing principle for someone who hasn't yet turned 18. There's certain things like they are not able to sign contracts, and so if there was an issue with needing to sign another housing contract, that would have to be bounced back to the families. But for the most part, our advisors will know what the students' birthdays are, and so they will know, oh, the student is not turning 18 until November, but we're not dealing with them in any different fashion.
I have a question here about the Makah Fellowship. On your right. And I'm wondering, whose office is it looped into? Is it your office? Is it the career side? How should a student navigate through all of this? I feel that there's so much information for them to think about. And as you mentioned earlier, the career aspect, the job shadowing, tracking starts earlier and earlier. So where should they start investigating Makah Fellowship or job opportunities or interests? Thank you.
Sure. So yeah, like Devin said, every student is also assigned a career advisor, and that would be something they could work with their career advisor about. In addition, Career Advancement has a really robust web page, and they're sending information to students sort of all the time. And this is typically a question that we're talking with students about when we're meeting with them autumn quarter of their first year. What are you thinking about for summer? Have you been in touch with Career Advancement? Have you attended some of the workshops? So we're working to sort of hook them into those resources early. But yeah, ultimately, it's Career Advancement who is dealing with the Metcalf internships.
And students all have a group meeting with their career advisors this week. So hopefully some of the questions will get answered then, but at the very least they'll have the face and the name to be able to connect with.
Hello. What is the typical class load for the first year students on the first quarter?
Sure. So the full-time course load here, since we're on the quarter system, is either 3 classes or 4 classes. And a student would need to take 3 half of the time they're here and 4 half of the time they're here in order to graduate within 12 quarters. So sometimes students will start with 4 classes in their first quarter, and that is great. But sometimes students will say, this is all new to me. I'm taking a chemistry class with a long lab. I'm kind of concerned about that. I want to start with 3. That's great. That's their option to do that. A lot of times students will start with 3 and then bump themselves up into 4 classes winter quarter. They can work with their advisor on that. That's perfectly reasonable.
Hi, I have a question about contacting parents and students in emergency situations. And you mentioned something about a direct threat to the university, but what about if it's something that's happened near the university and might be, something that needs to be talked about, or,
Sure. So I'm not an expert on this, but we do have a safety email that goes out, and anybody can sign up for that. And so when there's a security alert on campus, when you've signed up for that, you'll get an email saying what that was. So the University of Chicago Police Department patrols the area, and then when there are any incidents that they want pushed out to the entire campus, it goes out as a security alert. So let's say, for example, something like students have had laptops stolen in these certain areas at the certain times of day, they'll push those out as emails to notify the campus about that. And that's something that you can sign up for.
Okay, so I think we'll wrap up now, but if there are any other individual questions, you can feel free to come see us up here. Thank you so much for attending this session. Have a wonderful lunch, and we'll see you later at Convocation.